Hello, Hoopheads, and welcome to the weekly Hoopla, where I break down the need-to-know news in a busy world of the NBA. Before I get started, I just wanted to let you know that we appreciate you taking the time to enjoy a little bit of sports content with us. And if you could like and subscribe, do a little thumbs up, and nothing too crazy, we'd appreciate it. It goes a long way. And now that the corporate stuff's out of the way, let's get to the news. Starting with injuries, of course. Kyrie Irving is going to be the first guy we talk about today. The man located right above my head here had an injury Friday night against the Trailblazers, landed on Dwight Powell's leg, or Dwight Powell landed on his foot, rather. Immediately started a frenzy of rumors of whether he had been carted out of this arena. Obviously, did not return to the game. Teammates said that they saw him in the locker room, high spirits. Kyrie is now being labeled to have a foot contusion, and that is without a timeline. So essentially nothing new on the news front today, Sunday morning, when I'm recording this. But we will probably know something as the week goes through. Of course, Kyrie was going through some foot issues to start this season, things that he had kind of cited himself as a part of his shooting struggles. So it will be interesting to see Kyrie in the health, the timeline for him. This comes at a poor time for the Mavericks because you're looking at Josh Green being out for multiple weeks with the elbow sprain. That, I guess, on the timetable is unknown at this point, but is assumed that it'll probably be multiple weeks. Had the same issue last year, and that's where the assumption comes from. So pair that with Grant Williams currently not being in the lineup with knee soreness, missing 2 games as of today, probably likely to return this week, but still not a team with a ton of depth. And yes, Luka might be playing at the best he's ever played at. Unfortunately, he's going to need somebody to go out there and play with him. And even if you're trying to get the team better, you're going to need these guys healthy and showing. So it's an important note of that for the Mavericks. Onto a former Maverick. Kristaps Porzingis did return to action against his other former team, the New York Knicks, his other former team, not the Washington Wizards, of course. This one, not a big deal at all. This was kind of expected. Obviously, he missed the in-season tournament, something we kind of already assumed last week. Unfortunately, that did come to fruition. The Celtics got bounced as a result, something we'll get to later on. But he came back, was a big contributor, helped them beat a Knicks team that has been looking much better than they have in the past, at least to start the season. Julius Randle starting to find his little groove in the season. There was a Jalen Brunson injury that was sort of concerning, but it seems like he was fine. Villanova celebrated those guys this weekend, and he was walking around without too much of a limp. So I think the Knicks fans are just fine with Brunson, one of the Iron Men in the NBA. I think the funny part about basketball players is a lot of them are built very slender and built very lanky. And Brunson's just built as a very smaller, stocky guy. And so maybe there he gets a little advantage with the injury luck. On to another player coming back, Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre, actually, similar situation, got to make a big impact against the Wizards, his former team, and makes himself look pretty nice. It's been a pretty promising season for him. The Sixers have not had the best start to this season as far as your roster goes. James Harden obviously out the door, bringing in a bunch of new guys. Maxi's taking a step up, but now you've got to reconfigure all this thing while you're trying to compete with the title window for your MVP. So you need to do anything you can right. So getting a minimum contract player like Kelly Oubre and turning him into one of your most valuable players and one of the most valuable contracts in the league, if he keeps playing at this rate, that's a big win for the Sixers. And Kelly's back. He didn't really address the situation. There's still a lot of mystery going on about that. I think personally, I'm just going to file that one away in the I don't care bucket. I'm going to take him at his word. If something nefarious happened, if there's another story, I guess in due time we'll find out. But if the man says he got hit by a car, I'm just inclined not to dig too much deeper into that. Especially living in a major city, like I don't know. I think that I see lots of people dart in front of me in bikes all the time. I am thankful to have never hit one, but you know what I mean? Bike riders, you know what I mean? Come on. Everybody's out there willy-nilly in the city. Moving on to the next person, Anfernee Simons, who has gotten back in Portland, not necessarily going to help the win-loss column in Portland, though they don't give too much of a crap about that. I do think that Anfernee Simons coming back will be a great little pickup for at least watching them. There was some concern on my part that this would take away from the Shaedon Sharpe show since we're still without Scoot Henderson. And Shaedon Sharpe has been absolutely a fun time. I mean, this is a very, very electric athlete, very raw prospect. So a bad Portland Trailblazers team that gets to just let him run and do his thing for a season sounds like a match made in heaven for them, for him, for us as fans, everybody. Like, that's just the kind of situation you want to root for. Of course, we love Scoot. We want to see Scoot back. But once he's back, then it's a little bit more of a real team dynamic thing that they've got to focus on. Whereas right now, Shaedon just should go out there and do. And sometimes that's the best way to teach. Simons, he obviously has played with Dame for quite a while. He was there with CJ too, so he understands a crowded guard room. He understands 3-guard lineups. You know what I mean? He's not worried about the defensive impact. He knows what his job is. He got 28 in the first game back, 30 in the second. So I think you can tell he's been ready and itching to scratch into play. Just a phenomenal, fire starter kind of shooter. You would have to think that if Portland decides that their guard room's too heavy, or if Simons just isn't the right guy contractually moving forward, whatever you really want to think about, Simons quickly becomes one of the more intriguing trade pieces on the market. And so having him healthy, I can't think of a better thing for Portland right now, because it's not the wins that are coming. You just need better games to watch, and at least you get one of your guys back. In another similar trade-oriented injury with the same quadrant of the United States of America, in the Sacramento area, Sacramento, California, Northern California, for those folks not aware, Keegan Murray has been having some issues. Something I only really bring up because I think that it's plausible for the Kings to make a big move. Whoever it is, you can name that. We're not going to do trade machine right now, but it feels like Sacramento's primed and ready to do the trade because it's a tight division, it's a tough conference, and it's an open year in the totality of what's good and what's contending in the NBA. Sure, there are teams that you still feel like are clearly ahead of them, but maybe that only makes the trade argument stronger, right? So Keegan Murray is most likely, unless some goofy stuff happens, Keegan Murray is most likely to be the prime piece to whatever big time move you would make. Right now, he's kind of gutting through an injury, and you don't know how to feel about that as a fan, because if you're a Kings fan, obviously you're trying to win. If you're a Kings fan, you're really trying to keep Keegan long term anyway. So are you really that worried about these trade rumors, whatever? But logically, you have to think, if you want something, you must give something up in the trade. Keegan Murray is a very, 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 very nice prospect. I don't think he's a superstar, but I think he's a high-level role player, and those are almost just as hard to find. I think that if they would choose to keep him and develop him with this group, I don't hate that. But that takes time. If they're desperate to jump in and try to swing this year, I do agree. It has to be upgraded, and that's where Keegan comes into play. So regardless of whether you trade him or whether you don't, him gutting through this injury worries me a little bit, mostly because, again, he's a 3-and-D wing defender prototype guy, right? Like, this guy's going to be busting his ass defensively every night. That is one of the key components he must bring to winning basketball. And to do so injured really, really worries me. And then if it starts to affect the shot, that affects the confidence. And then we just get a slippery slope. And then all of a sudden you've wasted a young prospect. And then maybe he flourishes in the next stop because now he's been through trade rumors. You've been pushing him through these injuries. So it's a minor cause for concern. It's not like a Kings specific thing. This isn't just shitting on the Kings, expecting them to do shitty. This is just me saying, hey, I kind of worry about this. I kind of think, hey, I see why. I'm not mad at you, Kings, but proceed with caution. Similar situation in Miami. Bam Adebayo has missed 3 straight, 5 out of the last 8, all having to do with the hip that we talked about last week a little bit. Orlando Robinson, again, as I mentioned last week, not surprisingly, the Heat are doing good enough without him. They will keep around floating, head above water kind of play without Bam. But without him, they just become one of the track meet teams. They become a team that I think has the shot to beat anybody at a track meet, but ultimately that vaunted Miami defense just isn't the same. It's not even close to the same. They might have a couple nights where they can get close to it, but you're not talking about a defensive stopping team that grinds out and wins games without Bam. This is an important timeline. I said it last week. At least it's early in the season. This is not the end of the world by any reason, but we're going to have to monitor it because Bam is one of the most important defenders in basketball. He could be one of the most important defenders of all time if he continues his pace and his effort and the way he's approached defensive basketball at the highest level. But hip injuries can be terrifying for that. He's a very switchable guy. I mean, what he doesn't make up for, or what he doesn't have in length or size, he makes up for in the switchability. He makes up for in the athleticism and the taking that hip. This couldn't be any more vital to doing all of what he does. So we hope that they take that hip seriously. He takes it seriously, and we're looking at a healthy Bam by the end of the season. Even if we're talking about the 10th seed Heat winning the championship eventually, which I mean, come on. After last year, I think we should just all be ready for that possibility anytime. Moving into a couple of role players who maybe some wouldn't find that interesting, that intriguing, whatever. I don't mention everybody that gets hurt in the National Basketball Association. You probably figured that out by now. But there's some guys that I do think, especially if there are injuries that are going to linger for a while, it's important to note. Lonnie Walker with the Nets. I feel like this is a very important one. Hammy strain is going to have him out for at least 7, probably post-Christmas return. This is a Nets team that is kind of trying to be the blue collar. We are a great unit. There is no one true star. That is the goal of this group. They've been without Ben Simmons. They will continue to be without Ben Simmons. That's not necessarily a part of the equation. They do have Cam Thomas back. Now you're starting to find the health back. You were hoping that Lonnie Walker could be a good fit there. Lonnie allows you to play a little bit bigger. Lonnie sort of also isn't the worst option for when Cam Thomas is needing someone to go alongside him defensively, for when he needs to be replaced defensively. So I do think that Lonnie has done a great job of kind of displaying over this, the last Laker year, last year, and then this start to his season this year, that Lonnie Walker is a useful role player. He will probably always be a fringe playoff guy, but I think that, you give him enough credit, just given last year too, of when they needed him, he stepped up. He knows his job. He knows how to do it. Maybe he didn't pan out in San Antonio, but it feels like he learned the Spurs lesson. He learned the how to survive in the NBA lesson. And that's really the key when you get those ex-Spurs guys, is usually they at least know that is, I know how to do what I know exactly what I need to do to stay in this league. Whether I do it or not becomes a different thing. Kennard, who has not been a Spur yet, but there's always time, is currently with the Memphis Grizzlies, where he was last year's weak-ass desperation attempt for the Grizzlies to upgrade before the playoffs. I think in my opinion, the first real sign that the Grizzlies were probably not serious about next year or last year, knowing the jaw stuff, knowing maybe that Jaren hasn't completely put some of his stuff behind him on the court. So We saw that hilarious trade, and we're like, how is Luke Kennard making this team better? And he didn't. And no offense to Luke, it's not that he's a bad player. It's just that didn't make sense. But he can make sense to somebody. They added 2 to 3 weeks on his injury. That's a bone bruise in his knee, so this is probably just more of a safety thing. The Grizzlies are terrible. I don't know what to expect when Ja comes back. I don't know what to expect of the team. So that leaves into a lot of question. Who would they care about to have long term? Who would they not? In my mind, Luke Kennard, I really do hate it when the teams just sort of bounce guys around. And it's sort of just it's not because of the player, it's more of just the negligence on the team's behalves. Usually they just kind of treat these guys so like it's just so crappy. It's like no wonder your teams look like shit. The way you're treating these guys isn't even like have a shred of respect. You don't have to be the nicest people in the room. But, like have a shred of respect for yourself. Handle your business like a business. And so it just makes more sense to me for Memphis to be one of those teams. It's like we don't know this guy that well. We just kind of traded for him last year. Let's just move on from Morey. And maybe that is the right decision after all parties anyway. Maybe that's all Luke wants right now. But he could be a useful guy. I think he can help the defensive team, right? Well, sorry about that. Tech life, shit happens. Gotta love having unstable internet connections you pay way too much money for. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Luke Kennard. Long story short, Kennard, great player. Defensive team, do it. Non-defensive team, why are you wasting your play? Why are you wasting your attempt? Like, there's no reason to add more problems to your life. We play defense in the second season. If you make a move for Kennard and attempt to play for the playoffs, please, please, please be a good defensive team. The final person we'll mention on our injury list is probably the most interesting injury and will help us easily transition into the news of the week because at this point we're almost exclusively a Bulls podcast here. We're a Bulls show. The Chicago Bulls and Zach LaVine have decided to continue to keep the players set for the next 3 to 4 weeks with the right foot inflammation. As I like to say, the devil works hard, but Clutch Mafia works harder. If you know the Clutch playbook, and of course, if you don't know Clutch, we're talking about Rich Paul, Clutch agency tied directly to LeBron James. Of course, not directly towards LeBron James, but LeBron, you know what I mean? LeBron James. When a player is with Clutch and they decide they would not like to be with the team any longer, there is almost at this point, it has to feel like we can probably track it. There's probably like a template for it because it does feel like it's very common. There's like, the same kind of situations will happen. And right now we're at the point where, all right, let's shut down LaVine. Let's not have him, hurt the team here. What's the reason here? His foot's kind of hurt, right? All right. Inflammation in the foot. Cool. Sideline him. We can't trade, most of the league can't trade players until the 15th of this month, already. So it's, that's good. And then, hey, maybe there's some other guys that can't get traded till January 15th. So, hey, like if we extend this a little bit longer, then we can get the trade out. You guys don't have to have the locker room weirdness. You guys can move on with your new LaVine-less team and then add to it later. And we get to get our guy out wherever he wants. That's the Clutch Mafia strategy. I just crack up at how, like I said, it's almost a template at this point. You got to give it to Rich Paul. I mean, this dude he's got it figured out. I crack up. I crack up way too much. But that will transition us into the news and the rumors of the week. In the weekly bullshit, as I think I might be getting to calling it, even though I'm supposed to stop cussing, and then I do things like type weekly bullshit as one of the bullet point lists. And so this is, we're all in our own way a little bit, people. But Zach LaVine, is it a timely injury? Is it coming at the same time as winning basketball? Does that have a negative look on Zach LaVine? Does that mean Zach LaVine's not a winning player? All these questions are the norm. I would say, is Zach LaVine a winning player? Not historically. Do I think he would be elite with a fantastic defensive group and a competent few defensive pieces around him? Without a fucking doubt. Come on. He's a flamethrower. He's one of the best flamethrowers in basketball. Like it's stupid when this guy's on. It's just he's not good at defense, and you got to cover for that. And the Bulls, instead of covering for that, were like, hey, let's just add more guys who aren't that good at defense. And then now they just got this goofy situation where Alex Caruso is making up for Alex Caruso. I might be bigger. No, Caruso's probably bigger than me. He's like 6'4". He's a clean 6'4", right? I'm like 6'2", 6'3" with shoes, right? So yeah, Caruso clears me. But like, just think about me going around and having to cover for NBA players defensively. We'd be fucked. I don't care how good I am. Like, how the fuck am I supposed to do it all? Like, Caruso, and that leads me into the Caruso conversation because the Bulls are winning, and Caruso does sort of make up for it. Kobe White has looked a lot nicer. There's good communication. You can tell that this isn't a complete dumpster fire of a team. That being said, it is interesting to hear rumors leak out that they think Alex Caruso is untouchable, because I agree to some extent. It is the only right thing the Bulls have really done in rebuilding this. I think Lonzo was a great call. Unfortunately, Lonzo, I don't blame the Bulls for the Lonzo thing. I would have taken Lonzo then and there for the same price, and I would have built around it in a similar way. And maybe we are talking about a different world with Lonzo. But Caruso, yes, I agree. It's an amazing asset. It's an amazing impact player. All good there. At the same time, if this thing is completely train wrecked, like he's your best asset, and you probably got to move him. So nothing's really changed in the weekly bullshit. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of new points here that have come out this week, as we will continue to do until Zach LaVine is finally put on whatever team he wants to go to, they want him to go to, and then we will look at whatever that version of the Bulls team is. And then we'll decide whether that team stays after the deadline or not, because I think that's sort of the Bulls season. It'll be, let's move on for LaVine. Does this fix it? If it does, cool. Be a little playoff contender, move into next year, figure out how to move on from there. If not, blow her up. There was a quote of the week competition this week. In the comments section, you guys can vote. My personal favorite, not enough basketballs on the planet, from PJ Tucker. Now, the Clippers have not been that bad. They've been getting better, still a little mediocre, getting better. PJ's a really honest guy. Not enough basketballs on the planet was just a very blunt way to give me that information. And I already knew that information. It was just, very, very blunt way to put it. But I feel like most people are going to be a bigger fan of what Will Hardy had to say about Utah getting just absolutely dog walked by the Mavericks. He called it a masterpiece of dog shit, which I'm not going to lie. That's you can tell that this man spent a lot of time with Greg Popovich right off the bat. That is a very Pop adjacent quote. I don't know if that's exactly how Pop would have done it, but it's very Pop adjacent. I think for me, again, it's one of those things where coaches kind of get away with doing this stuff a little bit. It's kind of in their thing. For me, it's just funny that PJ Tucker's just like sitting there, like as a player on the team, just like, there's not enough fucking basketballs, bro. And he's right, but it's also like, you're the only dude who gets to say that. Like, if one of the other guys says that, Kobe Brown says that, his ass is grass. You say that, and everyone's just like, yeah, PJ Tucker, yeah. But, I mean, that's his role on the team, so I can't hate him for it. Adam Silver, He has had quite a few appearances because of the IST. Lot to break down there. We'll kind of take it in little bite-sized pieces here for you. Probably two of the things that I didn't expect him to talk about, but he did. The 2-day draft almost seems like a virtual lock in the future. I don't know if it would be as soon as this year, but it does feel like 2-day draft will be imminent, where I'm assuming the first round would be one day and that the second round would be the second. Love that. Sad that we'll never see another future MVP drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, but, we'll always have that moment. There will be some hilarious drafts of the past that I always go back to. I tell friends all the time, but I tell you now, 2013 NBA draft, go find it on YouTube after you're done here. Fucking hilarious. Start to finish, one of the most amazing pieces of basketball content that's ever been created, unintentionally, but it still. So yeah, excited there. Not a surprise, but excited. Hopefully that'll be announced officially soon. I'm sure that has to wait on voting. So then maybe the 2-day draft can't actually take place for their year anyway. But here's to hoping that the 2024 draft is a 2-day draft and we don't have to wait any longer. What we will still have to wait quite a bit longer for is the actual expansion finalities, implementation. All of that good stuff is still many years away, I would assume, while Vegas and Seattle are currently pretty much ready to just roll on teams based off of existing arenas and whatnot. There's still a lot of other work that would have to get done. So we still expect those two to be the expansion cities. But Silver did mention some 3 wildcard cities that aren't really that wild card if you pay attention to this, but we'll mention them here again. And then I'll mention them with the caveat that I think that eventually, if the league was ready to do 34 teams, probably again, not till like 2030s, they would go to Mexico City. Most likely, I think Mexico City would almost 100% promote the Capitans, whatever they would end up doing with that franchise. I think that's a slam dunk, pun intended. Vancouver, formerly for the Grizz. I think that Vancouver struggled because it's such a pretty city. It was like one of those San Diego type cities where there's just so much pretty stuff to do that you just don't want to go do professional sports that much. I think that was always what I had heard about it, but otherwise it's an incredible city. It's one of my bucket list cities. So I certainly hope that we get a team there too. That'd probably be my other vote. But to make this whole thing feel a little bit more normal, to try to get this thing all evened out, another Canadian city would probably be the direct rival for that, and it'd be Montreal. So that would be adding another one to the opposite side. If you don't know much about Canada, Vancouver is on your Pacific coast, and Montreal is way over on your Atlantic coast. So that is sort of the decision the league would have to make is, if you're going to 34, 33 is easy. Let's do the Mexico City thing. Mexico City, if you don't know enough about what's going on there, there's an obvious desire to pour money into Mexico City to make it more of a travel destination, to make it a bigger player in North America in general. So obviously having a professional sports team and the like would be another step in that direction. And then Montreal, Vancouver would just fight over the second official Canadian franchise, and I think either one would be amazing. And again, would probably most likely just come down to how the NBA would want to evenly distribute out things, because Vancouver is just a little above Seattle. So you're adding Seattle and Vancouver back at the same time. Or around the same time, you would be, I guess, I just would be interested to see how the NBA conversation go. Maybe they don't care. Maybe it's just easier to go back to Vancouver, so they would. But I don't know exactly where that would, if I would put my money on one or the other. There was a Henry Kissinger comp that we're not going to really break into too crazy because this isn't talking politics, the weekly politic. This is just a funny and very unprompted thing that Adam Silver said. I don't necessarily have any bad opinion other than I just crack up at. He was at the highest approval rating this guy's ever been, maybe any commissioner ever has been, because this in-season tournament thing has been such a surprising success. And then he just instantly is like, You know who I'm kind of like? Henry Kissinger. Of course, Henry Kissinger did just pass away, but it was not crazy, and it wasn't like a prompted question either. So it was very strange timing on Adam Silver's part. But that's all. We'll just leave it from there because we're not taking stances here. We're talking hoops. Um, Changes to the IST will likely come down is the final part of this. Point differentials were a big topic of conversation. There's talk maybe that you would put a cap on how much teams could actually add to their point differential in any given game. So if there was a blowout, they could only add 25 points for the example given. There'd be bigger prizes. So maybe front offices would be in part of it. The teams, you would have other ways of getting people incentivized within the franchise. And then the best change that I think almost has to come is the teams in the league need to be better in better cooperation on the courts and stuff. Because that was awful. Like patently awful. And the courts are too crazy. You can do something similar to this, but you got to tone it down a little bit, probably, especially the championship courts, the red and the blue. Like, I get it, right? Red, blue, we get it. Red, blue, we get it. But, like, they just look bad on that court. Like, you would think, like, a white, a gold, a black, like something championship-y. And it didn't feel like a championship. It felt like a fucking Spider-Man fan on 2K. I didn't like it. Didn't like it. Moving into one of the in-season tournament headlines that sort of popped out. We won't get into all of the breakdown of the IST just yet because that is coming at the end of our show here. But Zion Williamson made a lot of people's heads turn with the way that the Laker-Pelican game went. Spoiler alert, preview alert, not well for the Pels. Basically, what this ended up being was a opportunity for a national audience to really get inside of how bad or how, I'm trying to use the right words here, to really finally understand how much Zion's commitment to being a pro basketball player has been in question. I think Luka is a similar situation, but we've always known that Luka loves basketball. We just know that Luka has immaturity, has youth, had stubbornness to his game that he had to mature out of, and the only way he did that was by understanding that it wasn't enough. We all knew that. I think a lot of us knew that, but it's one thing to know it. It's another thing for these kids to accept it, to learn it, to hear it, whatever. And you see it now. You see the commitment to the physicality. You see that Luka is not just as great of a basketball player as he is mentally. It's physically that you're starting to be able to impact the game. Defensively, we don't need Luka Doncic to be the greatest player of all time, but you need him to be using that fucking computer brain for defense too. And he does now. So this is important. Those are all the important things. And I think Luka never really had a shot not to be on national television. And so it was easy to pick those things apart and follow that journey. I think with Zion, because he hasn't played as much, because we don't put the Pelicans on as much, as a national audience, we haven't seen this, but it's been there. And he's not a great defender. Even if he has had Shaq-like moments of offensive greatness in the paint, he's not a great defender. He's undersized. He doesn't make up for it with effort. The conditioning stuff is well discussed. Apparently, and I guess I didn't vet this enough, but his former trainer was taking shots at him too on all this. You have Charles and Shaq taking it seriously and actually feeling like they're like fucking disappointed to their son about his effort and commitment. He's a young guy. I'm not that worried about it. I think part of me really worries for the Pelicans because is this just another guy doing? I mean, are we really in Groundhog Day with the Pelicans franchise? And then it goes back to the NBA. It's like if you did, maybe I'm getting the conspiracy world. Shout out to the Bill Simmons conspiracy corner, but maybe I'm starting to wonder if if you guys thought, hey, we should make sure Zion is in New Orleans because Anthony's about to be a Laker or wherever else he could have gone, then I just you can't figure it out if you're the NBA. You meant well, even if you rigged it, you meant well, but you just ended up giving another one of the wrong ones to the Pelicans. I love Ingram for this. Like I think Ingram could be great for the New Orleans franchise because I think that he's fine. I think that's cool. I think that's good. For Zion, it is tough. It's tough to really believe him based on the commitment, based on a lot of the eyeball stuff, right? There's like a little video about a Bulls fan saying that he would look good there, and he's like, chill out, but I'm not reading into that. I mean, those fans are going to do that for everybody, man. Like, if you're not even you really don't make it into being an NBA great until you're photoshopped into a Laker jersey, So like, I'm not hating on Zion for people wanting his attention. It's just one of those things where when you get smashed in an in-season tournament game, and then the next day you have what appears to be internal leaks about your work ethic, honestly, that's a bad look for both sides. And so I think we're just in a frustrating spot with Zion's career. It's pretty much been the talk of the week. I don't have much more to say on it other than, I mean, does the kid want to be in New Orleans? Does he want to be how seriously will he take it? Is it, he's a dad now. That changes some things for some guys. Sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those things where it's all on Zion to want what he wants, and maybe for us to understand that he's still a young guy, and that it's just like I don't ever keep up with this stuff by myself. I'm going to do the inappropriate recording thing, and I'm going to look it up right now just to be making sure, like, Zion Williamson, age. Where is the age? I'm terrible. This is old man phone technology. He's 23. I don't even tell you people what I was doing at 23 years old. I don't even tell you. That's all I got to say about it. Zion, I would say you got like 2 more years of this, and then it's very bad. Speaking of hard to change people, I almost let off with it. Then I was like, this is annoying. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Everyone's heard it, but I might as well bring it up because, I mean, it's like, eventually we're going to need clarity and closure on this. It's a big part of NBA history, but the Darrell Morey, James Harden saga gets a little bit, just one last crumb, at least for now. I don't think we'll get anything else unless these teams play together against each other later, or until guys start retiring, writing books, all that good stuff. The James Harden said that he got a Supermax offer and that he viewed his relationship as a marriage with Darrell Morey. And the Sixers just basically were like, no, LOL. So yeah, that's the update. I'm not going to go much further into it. Like I said, I shouldn't have brought it up. I almost led with it just because it still cracks me up that we're in here. We're still doing it, but hey, one of the funniest subplots to it, that actually matters to NBA history of my lifetime, I think. So whenever Secret Base does their Darrell Morey, James Harden breakup video, boy, I am there. Another breakup we can talk about that maybe some closure is finally being had on all parts. Maybe not, probably not from a sport. I don't think as a sports fan, closure is a real thing. I think there's some people will, but I think there's just a population of sports fans that's incapable. They're capable of closure. Miffles got a pretty big pile of attempted closure from Kristaps Porzingis. He went on the JJ Redick podcast, had a lot of comments to say about his time with Luka. We talked about on the main pod about this, essentially, looking at how Luka was being treated within their organization. Nothing that surprises any fans, any way. Mavs fans, NBA fans, anything, right? We all get that. We knew that. KP kind of talked about that aspect. He talked about the maturity aspect. I think the maturity aspect is the best. I just talked about Luka's maturity. it needed to get better. This is the first season, in my opinion, I felt like Luka's 100% committed to winning basketball, which is saying a lot given how great he's been. So if you think that's a hating thing to say, it's really not. It's more of just like, all right, like I get it, but like, do you want to win now? If you want to win now, it's different, and now you see it, and now I think he knows that it's different, but he didn't, and KP also suggested that he didn't at this time, and now maybe going to Washington, sort of having to play that rehab ball in no man's land, jumping into the Boston world. Now he feels that way, and so I don't know if there's going to be closure for Miffles out there. I don't know if that's a fan base that gets a lot of closure at all. I think that's a fan base that sometimes maybe I'm too close to, but sometimes holds on to some stuff a little longer than needed to. Or maybe that's just all sports fans, and that's just something that KP has to realize, is that there will always be bittersweetness to him with the Mavericks. He had some high highs, and I think that on paper that marriage made sense. I think that he makes sense that he took the contract. It was dumb that they gave him the contract, and I think they forced it too early. I think there was just a lot of people to blame in that situation. So being mad at KP, being mad at Luka, being mad at Carlisle, being mad at Cuban, being mad at Donnie, at this point it all feels pointless, because I think that all of them sort of had their hand in it well enough to where it's just kind of it was a collection of fuck shit. So it's still amazing that they had the semi-playoff success they had with them, but at the end of the day, it was just not built right, not built right, and not built on concrete foundation, all that good stuff, all those good cliches. Speaking of one of my all-time favorite teams, it was built on probably one of the coolest foundations, if not the most quirkiest foundations, the most unique foundations. The Detroit Pistons, specifically of 2004. I don't think I have any 04 Pistons propaganda back behind me. Nah, there's not. There's probably should have rocked the Sheed jersey maybe, but it's a Portland Sheed jersey anyway. So either way, Pistons. If you don't know that era of Pistons basketball, it was in the prime of the rock fight era, as we like to call it, when every game could have been 70 to 80. Pistons were just a fun group, man. They were shit talkers. They were hard-nosed defenders, but they also had a lot of flavor to them. Chauncey was a hell of a point guard that could set up a whole rotation of guys with great abilities. Ben was an awful offensive player, but even him, you get put back dunks, you get just the ferociousness in the paint. And then, of course, Rasheed had such a beautiful game for such a big player. One of the more progressive wing, big guys, switchable guys. Of course, Rip Hamilton has his legacy has grown a ton in the Steph Curry era, because his influence on Curry is evident. If you watch the two tapes, you can see where there's plenty of Rip Hamilton in Steph Curry's game. And then, and so you just had such a great group. Great roster there. Bring them up because Rasheed Wallace mentioned that he is to blame for Draymond Green and Draymond Green's actions. And I never thought about it. I was like, oh, yeah, Draymond, he's from Michigan. Would have been a kid around that time. It makes sense, my age. Like, I get it. Yeah, hell yeah. Draymond probably loved the Pistons. It was a great group. I love the Pistons. I'm a white kid from fucking Texas. But I never realized, and I've heard Dre talk about it, but Joe Dumars, Hall of Famer, one of the top 3 or 4 Pistons of all time, maybe 2, probably 2 to a lot of people. He was in charge of running the team at this point. Obviously, he had already retired. He was the general manager of this group, and his son was actually Draymond Green's best friend. So then Draymond was in the locker room a lot with the guys. So not much more on that story there. We've been talking about Draymond a lot this year. The Warriors are sort of in this bubble where we're starting to worry if maybe finally all the antics that Draymond gives they don't outweigh the good anymore. Maybe the whole thing is a little rotten now, but still fun. Just a fun note there that I didn't think about, that Draymond literally would have been in the locker rooms for that team, and it explains a lot about the Warriors culture and who Draymond Green is for the fans who didn't know that. getting into some of the last notes here before we get into our IST check, our final IST check of the year. The Pelicans were going to give out $100 million, $1 million to 100 fans if they won the total prize. They did not win the total prize. I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was an interesting little deal. Don't know if anyone else did that. Just thought, hey, that's kind of cool. De'Aaron Fox turned down a contract offer this offseason, and we realized that this is probably one of the smartest moves he could have made because he is well on pace to being an All-NBA, first-team All-NBA, second-team All-NBA, absolutely worst. Could be in MVP conversations, all that good stuff. He was named Player of the Week with Julius Randle this past week when the story was reported, so gotta love that timing. And then finally, something I want to talk a bit on before I move into the final segment. Kevin Durant finishing his career in Europe, maybe not. Edmund Sumner played with him last year and the year before on the Nets. Was it year before too, I believe. On the Nets, said that was conversation that they had. You can take a wild guess of where Edmund is right now as to why I'm bringing this up and why he would have brought it up. But I just want to talk about it because I think it's really cool. KD will regularly go do this if he's been injured or if he's been the player, if his team has been eliminated. He'll regularly go and watch great European games. You'll see him pop up all around. He has ownership into some of these teams and leagues too. When I watch European basketball fans talk about ex-NBA guys, sort of the best of the best that's come through, you really haven't had anyone that I think that they respect to the exact same level as what Kevin would be since Dominique back in the 90s. So I would be really interested to see KD do this. Of course, how long would this take out? LeBron's trying to maximize his NBA lifespan, right? Like, I think LeBron's easily trying to go to 25 seasons. So would Durant even be interested in that? You know what I mean? I think you can follow his record or follow his track record and think, okay, well, LeBron already did that. I'm KD. I want to do the KD thing. And I think that would be kind of cool. And I think KD would probably do it big, and not to make a Warriors joke here, but I think he would join one of the better groups, right? And one of the more notable teams so that it's not worth nothing, right? Not financially, but that the impact of him playing for the European leagues is felt over here. It's not just that they get it. Make it big enough to where we notice. I think that would be awesome to add to Kevin's legacy. So even if it never happens, I'm sorry to have gotten anyone's hopes up. But honestly, I truly, if I ever met Kevin Durant, I think that would be the first thing I'd say to him. I think I'd say, hey, that Edmund Sumner thing, do it. Do it. Because your NBA career, you could retire tomorrow and it would be good, obviously max out your NBA career. Don't get too crazy. If you got title contending years in you, please stay in the NBA. But once you feel like that's diminished to a point where you don't want to play in the NBA anymore at a diminished level, and you know that you can play at a different pace and a different level with Europe and still continue to do the thing you love, that's what I'm talking about. So I'm big rooting for that one. That wraps up our news for the week and brings us to our final IST check of the 2023-24 season, where, yes, we have crowned a champion, and yes, it is hilarious who it is. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the things that went down in the IST. I think the real winners of everybody here was the TNT ESPN merger. I brought it up last week. Didn't expect it to be as great as it was, but of course, why would I ever bet against Charles Barkley, who was able to drop a couple of viral bars to add to his many viral moments, YouTube clips and compilation selections. Again, after this, go watch some of those because they're amazing. Told Stephen A, this ain't first take. This will be the first ass whooping you take. See, and I'm trying not to cuss, but again, I'm always in the thing with with Will Hardy's quote. I'm trying to be clean here, but I think the NBA gods are. It's just not a clean program. I'm sorry, it's not a clean program. Go listen to the game. We got the rims mic'd up. You hear these guys saying a lot of bad words. lot of words I can't say, literally. And then he told Bob Myers jumping off told Bob Myers congratulations for jumping off the Warriors ship in time. Of course, that's hilarious in its own. Then Bob tried to be quick and smart and was like, "Hey, I've got friends over there." You know what I mean? And of course, it's Chuck. I mean, this is what he's the greatest of all time at. And he, of course, said, "Well, you'll be seeing them soon too." Sorry, Warriors fans, you guys caught a few strays there. It happens. You had a great run, but with all great runs, they potentially could come to an end. And even if they don't, you're going to always have people assuming the end is here. So welcome to this awkward moment of your dynasty where we're not sure if you're still good or not, but most of us are too afraid to bury you. And a lot of others are really happy to bury you. Good problem to have. Comes with Ford and things. Pacers beat the crap out of the C's, blew up my bracket. Thanks, KP. I feel like a little Tingus Pingus would have helped the Celtics, and maybe my bracket would have been so busted. But then the Pacers beat the Bucks pretty handedly, which I also don't know if I picked or not. Didn't follow my own logic long enough to write that down. But either way, the Bucks played a good game. Halliburton played a better one. He did his Dame time at the end. Dame, of course, didn't play very well. He touched a trophy before the game. Everyone saw it. That's the rules. That's how sports rules works. You touch the trophy before you win it, you're gonna lose it. It's just you don't do that. They think we're superstitious, but then these players are so superstitious, you can't be like, "Oh, fans are just being superstitious." Like, no, you guys do all kinds of goofy superstitious stuff too. It's like, come on. And it's a respect thing. It's not even superstition. It's just a respect thing. You don't touch it till you earned it. Anyway, the Bucks beat down the Knicks to get to that position to have Halliburton embarrass them. Again, the Knicks, had a nice little thing going, and then this end of the week didn't really look so hot. But we're not getting into who's good and who's bad just yet. Just letting you know how that one went down. Then, in the other side of the bracket, the Pelicans and the Kings. That one was sort of my YOLO guess game. I started with the Kings, then I went back to the Pelicans. Which really seems incredible given how much Zion content we've gotten since then. But at that point, I was still really excited about where Zion was this season and how he was playing until he laid a big fat stinker against the Lakers, of course. But my YOLO hunch was strong, and unfortunately for him, LeBron James is stronger. 40-point, almost 50-point blowout, never really competitive, or not. First quarter was competitive, second quarter just from then on just run out of the gym, literally. And that was why, of course, we already mentioned it. Zion's conditioning was at the focal point of all conversations in the NBA world and will continue to be. The Lakers getting to that point have a bit of a controversy. We did talk about this on the main pod too. So if you watch both, okay, like, subscribe, share, all that good crap. Give me a comment. Let me know you do both. Be a teacher's pet. Let us know. Let us know that you care a little bit more than others. Either way, there was a timeout called at the end of the game. It's pretty controversial because your eyes and your ears in the last 2-minute report, there's sort of two different versions of the truth, and it's your decision on which one you want to believe. The video evidence appears that Austin Reeves, after a double team comes down on him in the backcourt, loses the ball, then LeBron James signals for the time. So that is where the controversy really boiled from in the beginning. That's all anyone else saw, right? Saw, eyes. We love the eyes, right? We love our eyes tell us more than they should sometimes, right? That's a thing. In this case, maybe they told us the right thing. But the NBA, the league story, the last 2-minute report story, says that How it actually happened was that LeBron inbounded the ball to Austin Reeves, right? Yeah, maybe it was AD, but I think it was LeBron. Inbounds to Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves takes the ball. Booker tries to flank him, steal it, ends up behind him. Forget who comes, collapses in front of him. Boom, double team trap, loses the ball. Before that, I think probably, according to this, around the time right after Booker is unsuccessful at stealing, LeBron says timeout, timeout, timeout. Then whenever the ball is loose from the second player is when you see the gesture. Again, what version of history you want to believe is up to you. But that is the two different sides of the story. And for the Suns, it's tough. Booker went on Instagram, posted the video evidence, and then later deleted it. While Kevin Durant was like, turning the ball over that many times, not sick. I was able to see that after, or I heard his comments before I watched the game. I went to go watch the game. They had 10 turnovers in the first quarter. That's why we like Kevin Durant. Real hooper. I mean, he really understands that there is a karma that goes through the ball. The ball is an energy. It lives. And a lot of people just think we're smoking dope and they're crazy, but that shit's real, man. And we might be doing both, but that shit's real. Anyway, championship game happened last night. We had the Pacers, the upstart Pacers versus the Los Angeles Lakers, the team that almost certainly the league is very excited to have in the IST Championship game. Being in Vegas, there was a very Laker-heavy crowd, and the Lakers outlasted the Pacers pretty much leading the whole way. Pretty dominant game, I would say. Anthony Davis's inconsistencies might be another big part of the storylines this year, but man, the numbers look good a lot more than they don't. So the inconsistency stuff still feels like maybe it's a bit of the past lingering, but a monster 40 and 20 from Anthony Davis. A little frustrating for me because it's, I think very highly of Miles Turner, so I don't love seeing Anthony Davis just absolutely wreck the Pacers like that. But outside of Miles, they don't have a lot of size to throw at him. So not putting it all on Miles either. I'm just saying you look at that as a real worry for the Pacers because you beat the Bucks this time, but you're going to have to deal with Giannis attacking like that. You're going to have to deal with a lot of rim protection issues going into the playoffs, even if you're this fun run and shoot team. Speaking of shooting, Pacers shot a paltry 24%. Which really I think was just I don't think there was a single player that had a good shooting night, actually. That's always relevant, but none that to their standard they would consider a good shooting night. D'Angelo Russell, I think probably the best takeaway from the game. He had issues with Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown had a lot to say about him last year, basically taking him completely out of the Western Conference Finals. So it was nice to see D'Angelo take that personally, handle his business. D'Angelo's looked really good this year. I mean, I think there's still a lot of things about his game that make me question it, but you can close the lineups better whenever you have the option of him and Reeves. Reeves had 28 off the bench last night. Reeves is starting to look good again as a six-man. So I think that the Lakers are getting closer to finding alchemy. It's just interesting to me because it's a team that the fans are always going to trade for everybody. The media is always going to trade for everybody. But the question will always almost end up being, do you trade for people, pieces, big guy, or do you just look at this team and say, this can develop? We trust this team. We like this team. They need time. Give them time. That's the kind of hard part with a team like the Lakers and other sports teams get themselves into this issue when you're that high profile players. You have all these other looming things that some of these other teams don't deal with. You can rush to make poor decisions, and that's one of those. Of course, now we get to have the conversation: is this a Mickey Mouse title? Do the Lakers hang a banner? We've got trophies, we've got medals. There's a bunch of fun stuff to go with here. Of course, when it's a team that is as bandwagoned as the Lakers, it is also as hated as anything else. And so it is a little funny to see how people react to this. Of course, it adds another hilariously convoluted and meaningless layer to the MJ and LeBron debate, because now LeBron will have one IST championship and MVP, where MJ has 0. Zip. Where you at, MJ? Where you at? So we knew this was going to be funny. So it just makes it perfect that the Lakers and LeBron James were the number one right off the bat. It doesn't feel like it was that controversial. I mean, I'm sure that if I get online right now, I can find plenty of anti-Laker and anti-LeBron propaganda that would help me paint that image. But it just felt like, they got an easy group, and then they sort of kind of got an easy field, if we're being honest. You know what I mean? The Suns were tough. You outlast the Suns in that first game, and then you get a Pelicans team that doesn't really care, and you get a Pacers team that can't really stop AD. So it just kind of, I think it just kind of worked out in a really funny way for the Lakers, and maybe conspiracy theories can say otherwise, but I think the first official IST was successful. I'm excited to see it get better next year. I think they will do a better job, have a little bit more organization than they've had in the past. But ultimately, I'm really excited to see what goes on. I'm really excited to hopefully not have this sullied and then feel like it's useless within a couple of years. Hope that adds to the TV rights. It's a lot of uncertainty in that world, so it's nice to see. It was really, really, really fun to see people in November and early December care, like a lot, not just players, but media, fans, non-hoop heads. It was interesting to see people have a real opinion about early season basketball. But that part's over. Now we get back to the grind. And I think this is kind of my favorite part about the IST, is now we get to have this giant window, right? I teased last week, I'll do tiers, leaderboards, all that stuff. Well, now it's like almost perfect. We've had 2 month sample size on everybody for the most part, other than the injured players. So now's a great time to start digging into the tiers, start digging into the teams that matter, the teams that don't, the team, who could be available, who couldn't. All of that stuff is actually clear now. So in a way, I think that's really the beauty of the in-season tournament, is that it does sort of, it's like sleight of hand, like all that stupid crap that we sort of need data sizes to be bigger for, that we just need more time. In the first 2 or 3 months of an NBA season could be so wonky and goofy, that this was just a really, 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 really good way to distract the folks while the regular season, the data, the good stuff comes up. And then now that all of this is done, we can bring you all the data. Now it's like, oh my God, all of a sudden there's a season that's happened that we haven't even been focused on. At least that's how we're going to handle it here. But we thank you guys again. Kept this one about an hour. We'll try to always keep it something like that. Have a little bit of time for you guys to do your workouts, get a little lunch break in, whatever you do. We appreciate you sharing the time. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. Bombard people. Take the URL. Be real sinister. Take the URL and just write it places. Like, just intrigue people enough to where they just type it in for some reason. Who would just write a YouTube URL and post it somewhere? I don't know. You would, because you love us enough. All right. Well, that's enough for me. Go enjoy life. But when you're done, come back and see us at Path.